Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Welcome to today's reading from Brilliant as the Sun, a retelling of Srimad Bhagavatam. We're reading from Canto 6 at the moment, Divine Protection, chapter number 6, Daksha's Descendants. Mukam karoti vachanam pangum langayate girim yat kripatamam vande Shri Gurum Dev Tarinam Paramanandam Atmam Shri Chaitanyeshwar Hari Om Tat Sat. Chapter 6, verse 1, Daksha's Descendants. Panchajani knocked on the door. Daksha, I know you are in there. I am meditating, my dear husband. You've been meditating for days now. You have neither eaten nor drank anything all this time. Please open the door. After a brief pause, the door opened. Panchajani pulled her sari over her head and entered the great chamber where Daksha kept his shrine to Lord Vishnu. She walked barefoot over the costly rugs that lay across the mosaic floor and made her obeisance to the four-armed Vishnu deity who stood on a golden altar, adorned with a fragrant garland of red, white, and blue lotuses. She turned to her husband, noting his unshaven and drawn features. My lord, please eat something, at least take some water, then you can continue with your prayers. Daksha slumped to the floor. Oh, for shame, I should never have lost my temper with Narad. He was only trying to be helpful. He is not the type to bear a grudge, my lord. Daksha sighed. All my efforts to increase the universe's population have failed. Even if we have more sons, they too will probably renounce the world. Maybe Narad is right. Maybe I should also leave family life. Panchajani winced. Beloved, do not speak like this. You are tired. Come and eat, rest a little, and you will think more clearly. Not now, Devi. I want to stay here and pray for guidance. Panchajani turned slowly and walked out. There was no point in trying to change her husband's mind. His determination was unbreakable when he really wanted something. She sighed as she reached the door, turning back again to offer her own prayer to Vishnu, that he soon satisfies Daksha's desires. What would she do if he renounced family life like his sons? She turned and left, heading along the passageway back to her rooms, her maidservants bustling in attendance. A few days later, as Daksha knelt in prayer, he heard a deep voice. Arise, son of the Prachetas. A short while later, Daksha emerged from the shrine room. His spirits renewed, he bathed and refreshed himself. Lord Brahma appeared to me. He told his wife, he has ordered me to stay in family life. He told me Narad will not preach to girls to renounce family life. He assured me we will have daughters who will populate the universe with all kinds of species, humans, gods, demons, beasts, birds, and serpents. Daksha lived happily with Panchajani. During the day, he performed elaborate sacrifices, and at appropriate time, he enjoyed the conjugal pleasures with his wife. His court was a beehive of activities. Gods and celestial sages regularly attended his sacrifices. As Brahma had predicted, Panchajani gave birth to 60 daughters. All were beautiful, of good character and affectionate to their parents. Daksha's heart swelled with pride. He arranged an elaborate sacrifice and invited all the most prominent personalities in the universe. He told his daughters, this sacrifice will last for 1 week. During this time, observe our guests carefully. You may choose your husbands from among them. The girls greeted each guest along with their parents. The gods were all young and handsome, adorned with brilliant ornaments over their silken robes. They entered the hall along with the celestial sages, who also appeared young and vigorous, clad in simple waistcloths and shawls with staffs and strings of beads in their hands. They constantly intoned mantras as they made their way to the Brahmin's enclosure near the sacrificial fire. The gods sat on a raised plinth of gold decorated with many colorful wreaths. Verse 2. As the week progressed and the sacrifice was well underway, Daksha observed his daughters. Early on, he noticed 10 of them casting shy glances at powerful Yamraj, and 13 of them showing particular interest in Kashyap. Over the next few days, he noted that yet another of his daughters seemed attracted to Kashyap, while 27 others seemed quite taken by the Chandra or the moon god. 2 others were looking towards sage Angira, another 2 at sage Krishashva, and 2 more at sage Bhuta. With only a couple of days left till the end of the sacrifice, all but 4 of his daughters confided that they had chosen their husbands. Just as their father guessed, Daksha pulled aside the 4 who were undecided. All the celestials are here. Surely you can find someone to your liking. The next day, these 4 daughters approached their father in private. They too had set their heart on the spiritually powerful sage Kashyap. Daksha hurried to Lord Brahma. Lord, he said, my daughters have decided on their future husbands. At the end of the sacrifice, Brahma called Yamraj, Chandra, Kashyap, Angira, Krishashva, and Bhuta. On my order, accept these girls as your wives. Daksha held a grand wedding ceremony, and as his daughters left with their husbands, he gave them many gifts. Parikshit glanced up at the night sky. It was approaching midnight. He had been hearing from Shukadev for almost 30 hours. The sage looked as fresh as when he had begun to speak. Parikshit himself felt no fatigue either. The words of the great sage were highly enlivening. The king felt sure the great audience of ascetics were as enthralled as him. They sat in complete silence as Shukadev continued to speak. Verses 3 and 4, Shukadev said, Daksha's daughters are important because their descendants filled the 3 worlds. 10 of them chose Yamraj as their husband. They all had many sons and grandsons. Verses 5 to 16. Shukadev described the children and grandchildren born of Yamraj and his 10 wives. Among them were celestials like Vishwakarma, the gods, architect gods like the Durgas, Amanu, 5 who presided over cities, daytime, the personification of lamentation, jubilation and fear, and even incarnations of Vishnu like Shishumar. Verses 17 and 18, he then described the progeny of Daksha's 2 daughters who married Bhuta. 1 daughter, Swarupa, gave birth to 10 million Rudras, of whom 11 were principal. Bhuta's other wife gave birth to fearful ghosts and goblins. Verse 19, next Shukadev described the progeny of the 2 daughters who married Angira, Swadha and Sati. Swadha gave birth to all the Pitas, but Sati only had 1 son, the Atharvaved. Parikshit listened attentively, straining to take it all in. Verse 20, Shukadev said, Daksha's 2 daughters who married Krishashva were Archis and Dhishana. Archis had 1 son and Dhishana had 4. Shukadev then spoke of the daughters who married Kashyap. Vinta had 2 sons, Garud, Lord Vishnu's carrier, and Anuru, the sun god's charioteer. Kadru became mother to the celestial serpent race of Nagas. Patangi gave birth to many species of birds, and Yamini to the locusts. Parikshit's eyes widened with surprise. All of the Daksha's daughters were certainly, I don't know how to spell this word, I just now read the spelling for you, Fecund. Verse 23, Shukadev said, except for the 27 daughters who married the moon god, did they not have any children? Shukadev shook his head. They became the constellations named Kritika, but they did not have any children because Daksha caused their husband to suffer from degenerative disease. As a result of his light gradually reduced, and he became important. Parikshit's eyes widened. Why did he curse his own son-in-law? The moon god was most attached to one sister, Rohini, and he neglected the others. When Daksha heard how unhappy his other daughters were, he became angry and he cursed him. Verses 24 and 26. Later the moon god pacified Daksha with courteous words and thus regained his light. However, Daksha could not completely revoke the curse. For that reason, to this day, the moon loses its shining power during the dark fortnight and regains it in the bright fortnight. He also did listen as a continued the entire universal population. Their names are auspicious to hear. Please tell me their names, said Parikshit eagerly. I've already told you of the 4 of his wives. The other 13 are Aditi, Diti, Danu, Kastha, Arishta, Surasa, Ila, Muni, Krodhashva, Krodvasa, Tamara, Surabhi, Sarama, and Timi. Timi gave birth to all the aquatics and Sarama to ferocious animals like tigers and lion. So we'll continue from verse 27 next time. Thank you for joining. Hare Om Tat Sat. Hare Krishna.